G'day, guys. Thanks for joining me for today's episode of the AMA podcast brought to you by Fantasy Basketball International. My name's Adam King. I'm the host at AdamKing91 on Twitter, and www.fbibasketball.com is the website. Fairly straightforward today, AMA. I've got quite a few questions to get through. Yes, my mic was on because my kids thought it would be funny to come and play with the settings while I was helping unpack the groceries. So, yeah, hopefully we're all good now, and nothing was said that was too inappropriate there. Look, we'll jump straight into the questions. We had quite a few come through in Discord last night. So I've just popped them in here. From there, so let's get things going. Where would you draft Lamillo in a redraft league? I did drop him down in my ranks a bit. Had him at about 9 or 10, moved him down to 12, 13. So I'd probably be looking at him on the turn there. Just given a little bit of uncertainty with the injury. I mean, he could only be out a week, but I'm thinking he'll probably be out sort of three weeks of the regular season, 10 games, maybe 12 games. So it's not nothing. It is a sizable chunk, I guess, when you put it in perspective and consider that it's the first 3 weeks of the season and you do want to get off to a good start. So I would be more comfortable drafting him on the turn there to ensure that you're pairing him with someone that's, looking like they're going to play. I mean, you can't project injuries, but that's where I'd be going on him. Do I see Simmons and Claxton working well together, even though they can't spread the floor? Yeah, look, I mean, they both started today, so it does look as though they are going to start together. In saying that, I don't think they're going to they're not going to play starters minutes together, in that I don't think they will be on the floor together as much as you might see a regular sort of point guard or hybrid guard center pairing, for that reason that they can't spread the floor. But they do have a lot of other good shooters that they can put on the floor. And look, Simmons looks really good. So, look, he's obviously not a threat from outside, but he can get to the basket. We've seen that in the past. He averaged 18 points, I think, at one point in his career without shooting. So, look, I think even though neither of them can spread the floor, I think we will still see them sharing the floor a little bit. Thoughts on Santi Aldama for this upcoming season Dynasty value? Dynasty, Dynasty, obviously not my strength. And I have a feeling in our recent Dynasty 30 Deep League, he went, I think around pick 200. So I think even though he's starting this season, or at least until Jaren Jackson's back, I don't sort of see him as an elite option moving forward. I think this is more of a situational thing. But in saying that, I mean, his progression is obviously going to be ramped up here a bit quicker than probably expected. So, if you're in a dynasty league, I mean, give him a shot. But in terms of redraft, I think he's being drafted everywhere now, probably top 120. If you can get it, I mean, the later you can get him, the better. But the hype around him is obviously pushing his ADP up a little bit. So I think that, look, he'll be solid for the first 2 months. We don't know when JJJ's coming back, and once he is back, Aldama will likely take a pretty significant hit. I think Brandon Clark's role will stay somewhat similar even when Jaren Jackson's back. So I think it'll be Aldama that takes the hit, unless he completely outplays Brandon Clark and actually earns those minutes. Playing time for Dale and Terry to begin the season. Look, I don't think it'll be significant enough for him to be considered in 12-team leagues. I'd only look at him in very deep formats, and I mean, even in my deeper leagues, I haven't really seen him being drafted. So, I think the Bulls have got sort of a good selection of guards. Even without Lonzo Ball there, they do have options at guard. So I don't see Dale and Terry sort of figuring too heavily in the rotation to start. And like I said, I wouldn't be targeting him in drafts at all. What do we think? So related, I guess, here, what do we think of Ao de Sunmu? Might he break out? I think last year was probably his breakout. I took him 13th round with Dinwiddie still available. How do I see his fantasy value? Uh, yeah, look, I mean, he was solid last year. Um, I think he's probably worth a look. He's probably going to play 30 minutes a night. But yeah, look, he's not a big scorer. He doesn't get a lot of assists. He'll chip in across the board, but he's a last round guy. In terms of whether I'd have him or Dinwiddie, I think the Sunmu probably won't hurt you in as many categories, but Dinwiddie will help you in more. So Dinwiddie's going to get points and assists, but his percentages are pretty ordinary. So yeah, I think Sunmu is probably a little bit safer, but certainly more boring. I'd probably go with Dinwiddie just there, as long as you can take that hit in percentages. Do I still take Jokic first in a Yahoo points league? Yes, but I think you could make a case for Giannis, probably Doncic as well. I think it's closer. So I mean, if you're in a category league draft and you don't take Jokic, you look like a bit of an idiot. In a points league, I think you could make a case that you could go with Giannis, especially with, I mean, there's been a little bit of chatter about a wrist injury for Jokic. I'm not too concerned about it, but I do think that, yeah, I think it's closer in a points league. Which two would you pick from Beverly, Nunn, Aldama, Eason, Poku, Grant Williams, Caleb Martin? 14 team, head-to-head 9-cat, Yahoo redraft, punting, field goal percentage, rebounds, squad. Yeah, look, I mean, none of those guys there are top 100 players at the moment. And given punting, field goal percentage, rebounds, look, I think you could probably make a case for a few of those guys. For me personally, it would probably be Aldama and Eason just for the upside. Beverly, I like, and with Schroeder has a finger injury, I think it is, so he could miss a bit of time. So Beverly could play a few extra minutes to start the season, as could Nunn, honestly. Beverly, we know some of his value does actually come from rebounding, so it probably takes a bit of a hit in a build like this. Yeah, look, I think for me it's Aldama and Eason just for the upside. Would I drop Melton for Poku? I wouldn't. I'd have Melton over Poku. I know some people are high on Pokuševski, but I'm not particularly high. But look, I mean, both of these guys are 120, 130, 140, that sort of range. So whoever you'd prefer to take, I mean, yeah, I think you're fine with either, but I would hold on to Melton there. How much runway do I usually give to last round flies at the start of the season before dropping them? It's a tricky one. I think something that people tend to do in redraft leagues is expect too much of their last round guys. So I mean, if you take a flyer on someone in the last round and then they don't sort of blow up in the first week, a lot of people are really quick to drop them. But I think you just have to remember, look, I took this guy in the 12th round or the 13th round, so you're not expecting them to blow up. I tend to give my guys a couple of weeks before I drop them, unless if their lack of production is due to lack of minutes, I might be a little bit quicker because the role is not likely to change unless we see an injury or something. So if you sort of drafted a guy thinking he was going to play 26 minutes and he's only playing 18, then I'd be okay with dropping him. But if he's playing the minutes and it's just his percentages are down a bit, or maybe his defensive stats aren't where you thought they'd be, I'd give him a couple of weeks and just keep an eye on waivers. I think that's probably another good piece of advice for early in the season, is to keep an eye on waivers, because as I said, a lot of people are quick to pull that trigger and drop players for a guy that might look as though he's going to break out after two really strong games. So you can pick up value on the waivers. But yeah, usually I'd give them at least 2 weeks and let everyone else drop their guys first. What are my thoughts on the latest Bogdan news? Drop him for a flyer like Eason or Isle Stash. Well, yeah, I mean, he was probably, I think he was going towards the back end of drafts anyway, 120-ish, something like that. I think I got him in a couple of leagues. We don't really have specific news. We just know that he's not ready. So, I mean, I would take Eason over him, absolutely. I think there's more upside there anyway. We've seen Bogdan's role in Atlanta. I think with DeJounte there, it hurts him a little bit. So he'll be playing six man. He'll get you some points. He'll get you some threes. Doesn't do much else. I do like him as a passer, but he tends not to get the assists that I think he could easily be sort of a 6 assist a game guy, but he's never got there, and I don't think he's going to get there. So, look, if you've got an aisle spot, pop him in there and just leave him there until maybe one of your main guys gets injured. But yeah, look, if Eason's available, I'd be grabbing Eason there. Ranking of players to stash, guys that are out mid-term to long-term, who's worth stashing and in what order? Yeah, look, Bridges, I wouldn't be stashing Bridges at all. I doubt he plays, well, this year at least. I'd probably have, if I go into pull up a list of names so I actually can talk about players that are out. I'm not going to count Lamillo in that list because we don't know. I mean, we don't know when he's back, but we know it's not going to be more than probably 3 to 4 weeks. I think the highest, if I had to rank, I mean, it depends on statistical need and your build and all that sort of stuff. JJJ would be top of the list for me, just because, I mean, there's a chance he could be back in a month. We don't know, and I doubt he is, but of these guys that are injured with somewhat long-term injuries, I think he could be the first one back. So he'd be first. Rob Williams would probably be the second guy. Lonzo, I'm not really touching. If you've got a league, if you're in a league that has, I don't know, 3 injury spots, potentially you could get him and grab him. But yeah, I'm not convinced he comes back this season. I don't know sort of who else you'd put into that list. I mean, Fultz, I suppose you could put in there. I'm not sure he's I wouldn't really class him as mid to long term in terms of his absence, but Fultz, I'd be happy to grab him with a last round pick, especially with Suggs out also. I'd probably grab Fultz ahead of Suggs, but only just. Both of those guys I think you could grab at the back end of the draft and pop them in your IL. I was pretty high on Suggs prior to the injury. Took him in a lot of drafts, so I'm hoping he's not out too long. Who else could we put in there? Ricky Rubio. Yeah, look, I mean, if you want to stash him, you could. It doesn't sound like he thinks he's going to be back till January. And if your league is a fairly sensible head-to-head league, come sort of mid-February, I think most regular seasons will be wrapping up mid to late February. So he might only be back for a month before you head into your playoffs. So yeah, look, if you've got an IL spot, you could put him in there, but chances are you're going to have to drop him at some point prior to when he's actually back. So yeah, I wouldn't be going out of my way to get him. Jonathan Isaac's probably an interesting one. I'm not sure he plays this year. I mean, he's still listed as out for the same injury that he was 2 years ago. So he has a lot going on off the court. So I'm not convinced that he'll be back this season. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not saying it will happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if he never plays again. At least not in the foreseeable future. I just think everything he's got going on off the court is probably more of a distraction and more of a focus for him. Distraction in terms of playing basketball, but a focus for him in terms of his personal life. So, yeah, look, that's a few names. Yeah, Joe Ingles, I'm not going to talk about him. Marvin Bagley, I don't know. I wasn't really drafting him anyway. Yeah, Yeah, and then you're sort of deep into the list there. So that's probably all of the guys that actually matter that are out that I would consider sort of out long term or at least more than a month or two. So we got some questions in here as well. Who to draft between Nunn and Pat Bev? 14 team head to head, 9 category redraft league, punting, field goals, and rebounds. This is very similar to that question I had. It's probably the same person. I'd probably go. I don't know. I like Pat Bev more in terms of his production or his ability to contribute across the board. So he'll get you some assists, steals, blocks, rebounds. Won't score a lot though. None will obviously get you more points, more threes. So yeah, I think it probably depends on what you need. If you need points, I'd go None. If you don't need points, I'd go Pat Bev. They'd be the last two. And good to see just rustling. Nothing was said. Nothing that shouldn't be heard. I see you have a Congo over at Capella. So that's probably in my rankings. I probably do. God, I haven't even looked at my rankings for a week. Yeah, look, I mean, Capella's already out with an injury. I know they've said it's not much, but it just seems that he's always injured, always has these niggles. I don't think they can play him more than about 26 minutes. I don't think they'd want to. So I think Okongwu probably gets 22 minutes right out of the gate. I mean, it will depend on how Atlanta are traveling in terms of production and standings, that sort of thing. But I could see Okongwu moving up to a minute split and even starting maybe 2 months into the season. And yeah, I mean, both of them I think are probably worthwhile drafting. I just feel a little bit safer with Okongwu with his health and his, I don't know, just his fit. I really like the way he fits alongside Trae Young, and I think he brings a lot to the team on the floor. So, yeah, look, I mean, you could easily take Capella over Okongwu here, and his upside in blocks is obviously undeniable. He could easily be a 1.6 blocks per game guy. I just like Okongwu and the upside a little bit more there. But if you were desperate for blocks, I think you could go Capella. Where are we? Dynasty. This will be a challenge. 30-team category league Dynasty in the middle of it, looking to move Towns for younger guys. Who should I try to tell? How old is Towns now? Have I got his age here? I probably don't. Let me have a look how old he is. I'm thinking he'd sort of be 27 or something. 26. Yeah, look, I mean, theoretically, he's not even in his prime yet. So if you're looking to move off him, it sort of depends on whether you're looking for a comparable player, so a big man, and whether you need someone who shoots threes, someone who gets blocks. I mean, I still have Towns as. I mean, it's not my specialty. I still have Towns as probably a first round guy in redraft, in dynasty leagues. But if you are looking for someone to go, if you're looking to go younger, you could look at someone like Evan Mobley, 5 years younger, similar skill set, but won't obviously not as good in terms of free throw percentage or threes, but a bit better in blocks. So he could be someone to look at. Bam, maybe. I mean, Bam's. I think he's slightly younger than Cat, maybe a year to 2 years. If you are looking to get someone who might be, I guess, on the cheap a little bit, Jaren Jackson could be someone to target with the injury. His manager may be down a little bit on him. But yeah, look, honestly, I mean, Towns has still got another 6, 7, 8 years, good years left in him. So it would be, yeah, if you're looking to go really young, then they might be a few guys to look at. Thank you, B-Dub. Killer t-shirt. Yeah, I do like buying my random shirts. And as I said, I've got a few that haven't even come out yet. They've still got the tags on them. So Yeah, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in terms of a stash. Yeah, I don't consider him a stash. I mean, he could be could be good to go next week. So, yeah, not really a stash candidate. I wouldn't put him in that category. 12-team head-to-head league. Should I drop Covington for Walker Kessler, Pat Bev, or Hartenstein, or keep him? I haven't drafted Covington anywhere. I know he'll get you some blocks and steals and threes, but he just doesn't score. Doesn't do enough for me. I just don't see enough upside in any category. If I had to pick sort of, I guess if I was at the end of my draft and had to pick between those four, I'd probably go Hartenstein if I had to just pick one. Walker Kessler has looked pretty good, but you're really just taking a flyer on him if you need blocks. I do think probably come the end of the season he could be starting, and so could be really good. So if you're sort of viewing him as more of a stash who could have value later in the season, you could consider Walker Kessler, but I think Hartenstein probably falls into that category as well. I think he probably plays 20 minutes to start, 22 minutes. And I mean, his overall game is far better than Mitch Robinson. So, yeah, I really like Hartenstein. I think I've got him as my starting center in the Dynasty league that I'm in, which part of that was just because I didn't draft a center until late. But yeah, I really like Hartenstein's game. So I'd probably pick Hartenstein out of those four, but I think Kessler you could make a case for if you need blocks. And that's all the questions we've got in there. There was one question which I'll touch on before I go and have some lunch. Yesterday, I think it came up in Discord, and it was just related to commissioners or GMs, commissioners making changes in leagues after the draft or prior to trades, that sort of thing. So I can't remember the specifics of it, but basically, yeah, a good commissioner should not be making any changes to your league after the draft. Like once the draft starts, the rules should be locked in. The only time you may consider making a rule change, and generally you're looking at a rule to do with an IR spot. So certain leagues may not have an IR spot, and you want to add one, or you want to go from 1 to 2 or 2 to 1. You could consider making that change after a draft, but it would need to be before any players have made any changes to their roster. And in saying that, I probably still wouldn't really be doing it just because people may have drafted based on what the roster looks like. So if you only have one IR spot, you're going to be less hesitant to take someone like maybe a Markel Fultz at the end of a draft, because chances are you're going to have someone else or a few other players cycling in and out of that IR spot. So you're going to be less likely to draft someone who is injured already. Whereas if you have 2 or 3, you can plug those guys in. So I wouldn't really be doing it. And look, if I know being a commissioner can be tricky, you often know everyone in the league and you don't want to piss anyone off. So I'd be trying to be more of a commissioner than a friend, which is hard, but I've had to do it in a couple of my leagues where I've had to boot people out just because of things they're doing or they're not engaging. Or so, yeah, I think the commissioner needs to be someone who is firm enough to say, look, I get where you're coming from, but we're not going to do it this season. Let's consider it next season. We made a lot of changes in one of my leagues this season, and I wanted to make them last year, but I didn't because people didn't agree. So, yeah, it wasn't a question in there, but I just thought something worth talking about because it does come up at this time of year, especially heading into this weekend with lots of drafts. So that's all the questions. So that will do for today. Remember, go and check out all of the content that we've got over on the Discord server. My ranks are up on our website, fbibasketball.com. I think Matt has just updated his Dynasty ranks as well. So go over and find all of those. Follow this podcast, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. BW has done a good job getting us up everywhere. And of course, if you could like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, that would be really good. Until next time, catch you later.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.